Hello, everyone. Welcome to another A Better Way of Life. And if you're joining us, it's Friday. It's early in the morning, and you're probably just beginning to listen to this over your cup of tea or coffee in the morning. We are actually recording this for all of you that like to know the kind of facts and figures on Wednesday at about 4:15 in the afternoon. And what a day it's been already, hasn't it?
Oh yes,
Yes.
I've been stirring up rather a lot.
Well, you started it. You started it, didn't you? We'll talk about that in a second. We've had a great day. We've had a good meeting
We
with
did.
someone today, which was very positive, very professional, and great conversation and about the future of training and delivering really worthwhile resource into businesses that need to know, be more aware of different disabilities, and also for people that need coaching in businesses to kind of help them through the progression of their career, etc. So that was really very good. And then we had a little blip this afternoon where
Sorry.
Marianne alerted me to a post that had gone out by somebody on LinkedIn, and we both commented. I ended up getting blocked.
Professionally,
Um,
what's that?
yeah, yeah, and you didn't, but I did. Ended up getting blocked for I don't know.
Agree.
No, I didn't. I honestly didn't say anything negative at all. Really, I didn't agree with them, but I didn't actually say anything negative. And in fact, apparently, it was because I liked somebody else's comment on the post.
But we've talked about this quite a lot, and I think this is quite symptomatic of how things are. And actually, it was quite funny because I just said to you earlier that this whole blocking business I find quite toxic. I don't really like it. And it took me back to pre being diagnosed, actually. I haven't actually had a spat like that with anybody for quite a while. And I did professionally. I professionally put my point across. And it it just reminded me of, I said that to you, how often when I would speak up about something that I feel passionate about, then I will, that people would say, Marianne, just leave it. Which this is the problem we've got, is that attitude of just leave it because you might disrupt things. And I think, well, I'm just having a discussion about something. And, if that person doesn't agree with me, that's fine, have a conversation, but it's actually quite damaging. And I think it's quite, it's so if you've got something to say and somebody doesn't agree, I'm then seen as at fault because I've entered into a discussion. So
mm,
it's quite worrying.
yeah. I'm going to say this is all I'm going to say on the subject because I'm not particularly worried about it and whatever. But I'm going to say this: I do think LinkedIn, you might want to review your blocking policy. And the
Yeah.
reason I say that is because there are other social media platforms which are available out there where when you block someone, you have to give rationale as to why you have done it, right? And actually, where they discourage people from blocking en masse. And if you repeatedly do it and then they look at the reasons for it and then they go and investigate it, if you're found to just be
Wow, really?
blocking, yeah,
It's quite
for
divisive. It's quite divisive because it cuts off if you're trying to say something that other person doesn't want people to know. We've talked about this before. It's actually quite divisive. It's quite dangerous, and it's just not very nice, really.
yeah,
I understand if it's because someone's being bullying or that kind of thing,
totally
but
get
even
it.
our whole thing was that you have a discussion with people over this sort of thing, really.
Yeah.
So
There's my view. In the business world, I'd like to say that it's only right and professional to have discourse with people, and discourse sometimes means that you have opposing points of view, and that's absolutely fine. I think if it's done in a polite, courteous, professional manner, without any kind of derogatory comments, etc., then that should be fine. I do not mind if someone comes on any of my posts and says, "Well, I disagree with you." In fact, actually, I've got some of my favorite people on LinkedIn are the people that disagree with me on a regular basis on some of my posts, and I actually really enjoy their company in the space. I do not want an easy life. I'm going to say that. The person that put this post up said they wanted an easy life. They wanted a platform that was just very saccharine just for them. I don't. I want to be challenged. I want to learn, and I want to have people out there like you, listener. If you're the kind of person that disagrees with me, I want you to disagree with me. But let's do it professionally. Let's do it courteously, and let's listen to each other. And maybe I'll learn something. Maybe you will as well. That's all I'm going to say on the subject. And now we're going to bring our guest in for today. Who we hopefully will agree with about everything, because that would be great. This is the wonderful Sofie Day. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you
Hello.
for having me.
You heard the rant in the background.
Yes, that sounded very interesting.
Yeah. And any thoughts on the rant before we get started?
I haven't been blocked for absolutely ages, and I also haven't blocked anyone for absolutely ages. I think I blocked someone who sent me an inappropriate picture on LinkedIn once.
Fair enough.
So
fair
enough. That wasn't
Yes.
because of any argument. I just didn't want to receive that picture. But for me, sometimes that kind of disengaging from the conversation when you've just made your point and they've made all of their points happens in real life more than online. But that's another story.
Yeah. No, I think the situation that you just talked about there absolutely warrants blocking. If someone's going to be inappropriate, then I think that's exactly what the block button's for. But I think it's I don't know whether you agree, but I think it's quite worrying that if you're on a professional platform where it should be open for learning and debate and whatever else, if someone just is going around blocking people so that only their opinion gets heard, that's actually dangerous.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because I think that this is, again, I said, well, it's symptomatic, I've just used again, of how people cancel on people and how people treat people, how they certainly
cancel culture.
How people wouldn't do it pre this. They just wouldn't. I don't think people would do it as much. And when you've got a friend up to somebody.
Yeah, I agree. I like healthy debates, and sometimes, because I use my LinkedIn for advocacy about anything related to autism, because that's my diagnosis, but also any kind of neurodivergence status. And sometimes I will word things in a way that attracts attention, because you have to stand out in the crowd if you want to be heard within the space. And then I expect some kind of, if people don't read the post, but they just look at the headline, and they don't actually read the post, they might sometimes comment with something that then evidences they haven't read the post. Like for example, I don't know if you've seen the recent headline of the Telegraph where autism can be cured. So I went, excellent news, autism can be cured. And then I wrote a whole post with evidences that I don't think it's excellent news. And it's, clearly using sarcasm. But if someone only looks at my headline and doesn't read it, they're like, oh my God, this is not excellent news. And
I bet you love that.
Right. Yeah.
You do a lot of that, don't you?
Yes.
Graham's posts, he does a lot of those.
I do that a lot, and especially my morning post, which always polls. It's fascinating. I mean, in fact, there's an example this week, if you go back through this week's ones, where I actually give the answer in the post itself, and yet I've then one of the options in the poll is, well, what's that? And the amount of people that have gone, well, what's that, when the answer is clearly in the post. Just read it.
I am honest sometimes, and I say it's a bit too early, Graham. I'm gonna have to answer in a bit because it takes too much. I'll be honest and say, but it's interesting, as you say, because I think that Sofie, particularly, so probably like you say, some of the things that you might post or talk about might be things that might be quite controversial or whatever, but people often don't stop to actually read it. They're ready for a row.
Yes.
Straight off.
Yeah. But then if everyone else, like for example with that one about the Telegraph, lots of great advocates have shared the post and they've immediately gone in with this is terrible. So if I want to have a voice within that this is terrible debate, I need to say something completely different to grab the attention.
Yes,
and then they read my take on it, which I mean, in this case it was, well, if it can be reversed, it can also be manifested within people, and that would be making the world a nicer place for all of us, because everyone would say exactly what they mean. There wouldn't be office politics, and I would love it, you know.
It's interesting because we kind of had this conversation earlier in the business meeting that we were in, and I've quite often had this conversation over the last nearly 25 years or so, working in the sectors that I've worked in, which is what is it with our fascination with anybody that's different from us, that we need to actually cure people? You know, what is it? Why are we almost trying to clone everybody into something that is acceptable for us when actually, you know, what really makes the world go round is the fact that everybody's different.
Yeah.
What?
That's exactly it.
So Sophie, you said, when did you get your diagnosis, if you don't mind me asking?
So I was diagnosed in 2020, so it was quite a process, but by around, the process was complete by November 2020. Obviously it takes a time from referral and everything to get there. So the initial referral happened a lot earlier, but yes, that's when I was officially diagnosed.
So when we were just saying then about, like, for me, I've been diagnosed with ADHD. I suspect autism. I don't know, and it doesn't really bother me, to be honest. All it did was gave me the answer that I'm not awful, which is how I felt for so long. So as we were saying, I said I get access to work, and I got a certain amount for coaching, and I said, what we talked about earlier, I don't really want to be coached out of being me, to be quite honest. I'm quite happy with being me. I don't know what are your thoughts on that.
So I did do access to work as well, and my coaching was not a good experience at all, because the first thing she said to me was, "Hi Sophie, how is your autism doing?" And I went, "Hey autism, how are you doing?" And I said, "My autism is not responding to this question.
Hello autism, how are you?"
And yeah, and even when I was doing that, and then the next thing she said is, "You don't have to stay on for the whole hour. We can finish now or after 5 minutes." And I was like, if that's my option, then I will finish now. And I had 3 similar calls like that, and then I just stopped it because there was no. I then did say, I actually want to have someone experience. I said, can I have someone experience, and can I see their LinkedIn profile or something similar to see that they've worked with neurodivergent people before, preferably autism. I have the opposite of you, Marianne. I have autism with suspected ADHD. So I said, can I see that they have those credentials? And then they didn't respond to anything. I was meant to have 6 sessions with my manager at that time. That never happened either, and I just didn't get it. I did have a really good experience with the Maudsley Hospital, who have a unit that specializes in people who have autism or ADHD. That was a 2-year waiting list before I got there. So I finally had therapy in April last year. And what impressed me is that the first thing she said is, "I'm not trying to cure you. I'm not trying to change you. I'm trying to help you manage the way other people."
I love that.
Yeah, and the way other people are treating you because you're different, and that must be very difficult. And I want to help you manage your mental health around that, because when you're treated as if you're wrong all the time, that impacts your mental health. And obviously they knew from the pre-assessment that was a factor for me, and we want to help you manage that better. So it wasn't about me, it was about the impact on me of other people, because at the moment I'm not one of these people who's confident enough. I know that I'm seemingly okay within this conversation, but I sometimes do experience going completely mute. I like routines. So I'm not confident enough to set up my own business. So I want to thrive within payroll employment. And there's loads of areas I do thrive in. But then there's certain areas where I really struggle. And it is with lack of acceptance. And I found it so nice that that's what she said that in the first meeting.
That's incredible hearing that.
Yeah.
And different, even when you were saying that you seem confident in this setting, I suspect it's because you feel safe.
Yes, because I'm at home. My dog is next to me. The reason I asked in the beginning of our chat whether I could have a background on is because seeing my pets in the background is very calming to me as well. And yes, I kind of, even though we haven't met before, I know what you're about because obviously I did read up on it and look what kind of podcasts you do. So I do feel safe enough. I do feel nervous as well, though.
Oh, it's fine. And can I say that having your pets in the background makes me feel better as well? It honestly does.
So the cat on the far end is Yoko. She's 14 years old. Then this one, the middle one, is her son Lennon. He's 13.
Wow. And
then we have my more recent rescue. She's 3.5, Star. And she's from North Macedonia and is a bit of a mix. So, but yeah, I am very keen on my pets.
Animals make everything better.
That's really interesting. The whole of what you just said about that whole experience, though, and it's quite
doesn't surprise me. Well, it doesn't surprise me.
I was going to say it's shocking, but it's and just very damaging. I mean, I know for myself, ever since 18, really, I'd felt maybe depressed, and all the way through my life, it was anxiety and depression. And I thought, I'm not. I kind of knew that I wasn't. I was like, I'm not an anxious person, and I wasn't depressed. But actually, of course, in the end, you realise then it's from living for a whole life, I guess, being criticised constantly by people.
And misunderstood,
It is that misunderstood. And what was funny was about that conversation that I stirred up earlier, I actually haven't had since. Because what I tend to do now, me finding out, was that I distance myself from people that don't bring out the best version of me. And I used to feel very angry. I was saying this to somebody yesterday, but I think I was at odds with the world. So what was funny today was having that. I was very measured in my responses, I think, Graham. There was nothing I said in there that was rude. I would show up every day of the week like that. But what was interesting was that I could feel myself, but I had it because I know how to manage my head now. I was able to keep it under wraps, but I suspect that the other person probably isn't very good at managing themselves and didn't really present themselves in a very good light. And I saw the old me in her quite interesting. And I'll admit that now because I'm very proud of that, because it is. But what it showed was that we all have to manage. If you're going to show up on social media, like you said, when people saw the heading you put on there, a lot of people don't take that time to stop. But equally, you would have then had to be not biting back at people to say, oh, actually, if you go take a look back.
Yeah, so when someone reacted to the headline, I just pointed out, you didn't read the article, but it's. But thank you for commenting and reposting.
Yeah.
Because I want to keep it polite and I don't want to offend someone, especially when I can see from their profile that they're with us. We're all
there we go
doing advocacy for the same cause.
Sophie, can I just ask, is part of the problem the sort of digitalizing of communication? Do you find that that's creates part of the problem? Because if we were together in the same room and you could read my body language completely and you could literally see the whites of my eyes, you'd probably understand me more emotively than when we're behind a screen and you get snapshots of language and things from people. Is it harder to really understand what the other person's meaning, or understand where that communication is meant to be or whatever? And I think it's even more difficult now that people are kind of creating almost pseudo characters for themselves online.
So I do completely see that on I see what you mean. For me, sometimes with face-to-face interactions, or even in this kind of setting where it's kind of between, it's not like we're keyboard warriors at the moment. You know, we are actually seeing each other in some ways. But for me, I need to be confident for face-to-face interactions. So I actually close in on myself. I'm much more likely, I'm being quite open now, but if we were doing a conversation over email, I would be giving you way too much details about what's going on for me in my life, because I open up so easily. You know, there's actually, I reveal more of myself, but I do see that some people hide behind a persona online. And in a way I do as well, because I'm very introverted, and it's not how I come across, because I post so often on social media that people must think, oh wow, she's very she speaks a lot. And my husband, who is actually he's in public relations, he's the whole day, all day, when he's working on something, he's on the phone, picking up the phone, talking. He does have social media, but it's mostly managed by an external company. He doesn't like social media. He doesn't like that kind of communication. So he is the extrovert, and he loves the face-to-face. He loves the phone call. He actually does Zoom meetings as well, but the more face-to-face, the better. For me, I actually quite like the email communication, but if I'm really comfortable with someone and I can be one-to-one with them, then I do love face-to-face, and having that like face-to-face interaction where you can actually see the smile better, you can read the body language more. So I do love that as well. And I had such an interaction yesterday with one of my colleagues, and I got to know her really, really well. We spent 3 hours together. That's because we have a well-being afternoon, because I don't like veering out of my routine. So once a month we do get 3 hours where we can just be with a colleague and do things.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really good. It's not work. It's with a colleague, but it's not work related. Some people like doing things in groups. I don't. So I always do it with just one or two colleagues, and I ask them what they want to do, and then you get to know them better. So I do love the face to face, but yeah, I don't always think it's and ironically, the people that don't like the written, because my friends accept that I write emails when I'm really upset, and even if it's not with them, but that's how I open up when I'm in a really difficult situation. And it's the people that I'm not comfortable with who don't accept the writing, and I'm not comfortable doing the face-to-face or the phone call, or it's ironic.
What's interesting about that is I looked back weeks ago at, I found a whole load of letters from when I was 8. I lived in the States when I was 18. And in there was a whole load of bunch of letters, because people, we didn't have social media then, we didn't have Zoom, nothing. Every 2 weeks I'd have a phone call from my parents, and people wrote me letters, stacks of them, loads and loads and loads of them. But I also look back at letters that me and my best friend used to write to each other and other friends. And it was funny because I saw in there that I should have seen the signs back. Well, I didn't know, did I? I mean, I can literally write essays when I'm upset, sending a text to somebody, and there's another one and another and another. And it's like, okay, I've just written a novel because I'm upset. But and sometimes people will say, what I used to get is, I don't think you said it just earlier, but I may have heard it because I'm used to hearing it. I write too much or whatever, and I say, by what gauge? Because actually, if I feel happy writing that, and my answer back to people is, maybe I thought you didn't write enough. Maybe I thought you weren't enough. Maybe I thought you were a bit insensitive. And actually, generally speaking, when people don't like that level of writing, it probably hits a nerve with them.
Yeah, no, I think so. So the
Why
way
should you?
yeah.
Why should you change?
So I always think, because I'm so much better expressing myself in writing, that when people object, it's because I'm too good at making my point. And because I always evidence everything as well, and then I don't get a response, and I'm kind of told you're emailing too much.
Too much. What's too much?
Yes. Yeah, no. And then I'm like, but when I'm face to face with you, I clam up and I don't say anything. And that's very convenient for you, but it's not that good for me. You know, and I mean, sometimes I have people say, you can email, but it might take a week or 2 weeks to respond and to read it. And I might not have time to respond. So I'm like, yeah, I've had that said to me. And I'm like, okay, so it might take 2 weeks
but
to read it, and I might not get a response.
All of this comes back down to, yet again, and we talk about it all the time, but all of this comes back down to people not taking enough time to understand each other, right? Because I can see why, for some people, receiving a lot of information really is, gets on their goat, because if you're the kind of person that's got a very short attention span, can't deal with long information, etc., then for some people that could actually be a quite sort of passively aggressive act. They're receiving a lot of information. They can see that as something like, oh my God, they're going off on one, etc., and then they respond in a negative way to that, etc. But what's not happening here at all is somebody stopping and just trying to understand why that person needs to go through that experience, right? I mean, you writing that stuff is not just a form of communication to the other person, it's a form of communication for yourself. There is if you like, there is a cathartic experience that you are having by actually putting down your thoughts in that kind of detail. And
yeah, I mean, sorry, I was going to say, in my signature on all of my emails, personal and professional, it says, even though when it's a difficult topic, I'm more likely to use written communication, you can communicate back to me in whatever way you want. Because if I've made my point, you can call me, I'll listen to you, and if I'm unable to respond, I will then email if I'm feeling too clamped up to respond. So I'm giving that option as well. And I once explained and they thought I was completely crazy, but I once explained to a manager, I mean, I've been working for 25 years, so I don't know exactly how long ago that was, but I said to a manager, because I work in substance misuse, I once had a German client, and I did German when I was 16 to 18, and I'm not good at speaking it, but I can understand it. And how I communicated with this German client was I spoke in English, he spoke back in German, and we were speaking English, German, because he could understand English enough to understand what I said, but not speak it well enough. And I'm like, why can we not do that with written communication and verbal communication? Why can't the same thing not happen? Why are we not being flexible within that approach? Like, allow each other to communicate in the way that's more comfortable to them.
I think what a lot of that is, though, is that we get back again to the whole, like, people have often said to me, because you apologize all the time, and it's from a lifetime of having to apologize but I don't apologize for being me now at all, because I don't, I'm just who I am, but it will have been from years of that. And so straight off, it's, you've done that wrong, and you think, as you said, but so my thing straight, when you said somebody might think, oh god, that's a lot of information, my straight off initial reaction was just whack it into AI. Then what I've just sent you, put it into AI, and then it'll summarize it for you. Why is it tends to be that the person that's the problem tends to be the one that's got to be the one that changes, but in actual fact, well, maybe I see you as the problem, but I'm just too polite. And I think what happens is people that are neurodiverse, or people who've suffered whatever problems or adversity. It's a bit like me. I lost my dad to suicide, and I'm not actually massively sensitive to that kind of stuff, because I would be more wanting to support the person. Do you know what I mean?
I just think it's about being honest as well.
And just being respectful.
Well, yes, but and being honest in a respectful way, right? But
Yes.
I think it is about being honest, because so I have a client, Dan. Dan is partially sighted. If Dan sends me messages, he tends to send me messages by voice message, and he tends to like voice messages back. It's easier for him to access. He can just listen to it. He doesn't have to get another piece of software to read the text back to him, which he would potentially have to do if I sent him a long essay. So that kind of works for him. Now, that sometimes causes me problems. And it might cause me problems if he's sending me information when I'm in a public place and I can't then play his voice messages because I can't,
Yeah.
But you just have to communicate. You just have to say, I will listen to your voice messages, Dan, or whoever it is, in an hour's time, because at the moment I'm in a public place and I can't listen to your voice messages. Okay. In which case, if it's urgent, he'll then probably send me a text message. Right.
There we go. We've all communicated.
We've all communicated. If people send information in one way and it's problematic for any shape or form to the person at the other end, let's just be honest about it and say, actually, oh, you've sent me a lot of information here. I'm going to struggle to come back to you quickly with this because I do want the time to read it or whatever. Therefore, it might take me a bit longer. But just so you know, I've got it. I do want to look at it properly and whatever, because the problems start when we just stop communicating because it isn't in the way that we wanted it in the first place. That's the problem. Or when we harbor resentment for the way that things are being communicated and actually then go, oh, do you know what? Every time that they send messages, they send them like that. And I really hate that. Why don't they, just tell the person it's potentially a problem for you. They might help you to understand their viewpoint more as well. And the more we understand, the more we may come round to changing our minds as well as to why or how we can communicate.
I do wish, though, that it was more of a, I will always speak up, and you and I have, Graham's my support worker. And isn't it funny, though? I don't like that word. I don't know why, but anyway, he's my fairy godfather. But anyway, but we have many a conversation, and actually the other day I got very upset about something we were talking about, but because we communicate with each other, and Graham's particularly good at that, which I see that a lot of people that call themselves coaches, I wonder if that's actually really whether they should have that title. But we got talking, and I said to him, I snapped at you the other day about something, and I said, actually, can I explain to you why I snapped at you? And then you said to me, gosh, I didn't realise. I said, I don't think I even realised actually why it hit a nerve for me. And then we had that conversation. And actually, by having those conversations, it not only means that he understands me better, potentially he then might understand somebody, I don't know. I just think the more we talk, and people do quite often laugh at people with ADHD because we talk a lot. And someone said to me a while ago, gosh, Marianne, you talk a lot, but you listen a lot too. And I said, but when I'm doing my talking, a lot of that is allowing people to feel safe. So they talk, and I listen a lot, an awful lot from what's
going right back to the beginning of this conversation, talking about the whole support work type piece and the coaching and everything. One of the things, Marianne will tell you that this is the truth, is when we first started working together, one of the first things I did was go through how we were going to work, right? And we talked a lot about communication, and we talked a lot about I let her talk a lot about her business, etc. It amazes me, right, how somebody can turn up and go, right, we're going to have a session now, and boom, clock's on, here we go, right? Having never met you, talked to you, understood you, your communication methods, how you work, how you tick, how, you know, what you know makes you excited, what makes you cry, what makes you any of that, and think, right, we're going to get on and this is going to work. That isn't ever going to work. That's never ever going to work, because until somebody actually understands you and where you're coming from, and so there needs to be groundwork. This is never ever a sprint.
I think some of this is the problem with coaches, is that they've got templates, which is the same, you know, quite a lot of things. A lot of things nowadays seem to be very template, like whether it's even counselling. You know, I've had counselling before and I'm like, I just can't do it because it feels like I'm on a timer or something. It's just, you know, it's just not, it doesn't feel like it's going to work there. But I've had business coaches say to me before, I had somebody laugh at me once for something, and I said, if you do that, I'm putting the phone down right now. Somebody else asked me, in an ideal world, what would? And I said, but we're not in an ideal world. Yeah, but what would? And I thought, now I know about my neurodiversity, I'm going, but we don't live in an ideal world. So why are you asking me a question when I don't actually live in an ideal world? Because it's not going to. So it would be about sort of explaining. But a lot with Graham and I was that actually, interestingly, he was offering to give me something, because I was like, I don't want somebody else doing my business for me, and I'm not handing over control. I'm a bit of a control freak. But actually, by saying that he would work with me, actually in the end meant that I did give him that trust. And that was massive for me to do that, massive, but only because I know he's put that work in to get to know me and not made assumptions, because that other word, the assumptions bit, isn't, you know, because people might, I don't know, rock up at your LinkedIn profile, Sofie, and make assumptions maybe. But again, we were saying earlier on, I don't want to ever work with somebody that's going to make assumptions then.
Yeah, no, it's the same about me. Like, yeah, you've said a lot of interesting thing. I was thinking about what you said about apologizing. I apologize all the time, and actually, a colleague I get on really well with said, Sofie, I never have a conversation with you where you're not apologizing. You need to stop apologizing. And I responded with, oh, I'm so sorry. I was like, oh my God, I've just literally just done it. And but what I find is I apologize a lot, but when I feel like I need an apology, not in my personal life, but especially in professional life, I never get it. And I'm like, but you've clearly hurt me, and you've clearly said an untruth which I've evidenced, and I'm saying it's okay, but just acknowledge that you've made a mistake, or I'm not saying that you were deliberately lying, but clearly this is not true. And it disengaged from the conversation. And I'm like, but why? Because I would be apologizing. Why are you not just doing a small apology or just a recognition? And people don't like
recognition. It's the weekend I had it that I was starting to realize. So for me, my diagnosis brought a lot about how I'd people pleased, but I would lose my rag in the end. And I then literally overnight thought, I'm not taking this. So I moved myself away, and I realized this weekend I was letting it slide, and I was starting to get feelings of resentment inside. So now when I feel like I need those apologies back from people and I need them to heal, at the weekend, somebody said to me, oh, but I didn't mean for it to be like that. And I said, you may not have meant it, but I'm now telling you, that is how it's made me feel, and I'm not going to apologize for that. I am not going to apologize for that. You've now said that. You may not have meant it, but can we now think about that? And the other one is, oh, it wasn't meant like that. I said, it may not have been meant like that, but this is how it's landed with me, and it really helps me keep really at peace.
Yeah, or you're being told you shouldn't have taken it personal, shouldn't have been so sensitive, and that is really. But I am lucky because I'm 50 years old and my personal relationships are very established, and I have literally removed myself from people that just really didn't get me. So I have really positive friendships, and I feel lucky because I'm autistic, and a lot of autistic people struggle making relationships, and I don't have that. I have quite good personal relationships. I struggle with it at work, and I'm not, when I say at work, I'm talking about the last 25 years, obviously not about a specific employer or my current employer, but it is a professional issue where I don't get any acknowledgement or apology, and people just shut up and they move on, and I'm like, wait, I always apologize when I make a mistake. I take accountability. Always. And it's like, so why can't you do the same thing for me? Because I don't know
That's
if you needed it.
interesting.
Surely.
Yeah. Do you think they have apologized, or do you think they think that there's nothing to apologize for?
That's what I don't know. So
Right. Okay.
when I clearly evidence something and clearly make a point, there's definitely something to apologize for or to acknowledge. So to just say, oh, actually, you're right, but we don't feel like we need to apologize, but you're right about that, or something, but they don't do either. And it's almost like, if they apologize, are they giving me a weapon or something that I can do something with?
I've done a lot of thought. I've done a lot of thought around this, and I said before about this victim and perpetrator thing, that you seem to get this, that somebody seems to hold the higher ground sort of thing, and that's how it feels. And it's like that person is Teflon, and the other one is going to be held accountable. And so I felt I have been doing that a lot more, and it's felt a lot better. I mean, I have a much greater sense of calm about me. I don't get wound up by stuff anywhere near. And it was only earlier on that would have been a completely different me earlier on, Graham. I'm telling you that now. I would not have shown myself in a very good light, because it would have that is that side of having ADHD, about not being able to necessarily be in control of my emotions that I've used. So when people talk about labels being diagnosed, the label was more of a, right, okay, that's my brain, now let me try and understand it more. So I do, I think sometimes people don't realise, but I also don't let them get away with it, because if you're not going to let me get away with it, I'm actually going to try and educate you to understand that that's not okay. You've just made me, you may not have meant it, but can we have this moment?
I'm going to reference a really naff kids film now. All right. Just for all of you beautiful people out there. Who's seen the first Peter Rabbit film? With James Corden doing the voice of Peter Rabbit.
Yeah. Peter Rabbit. Yeah. Was the first one.
What do the rabbits do when they're sorry? Can anyone remember? What do the rabbits do when they're sorry?
Apologise, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, they put their heads together and apologise, and they apologise to each other. I guarantee that probably in good relationships that you have, right? And as Marianne knows, I don't necessarily have all great relationships with everybody. But I can guarantee that in great relationships that you have, when it comes to apologizing and saying sorry, you put your head together with that person, and there's an amount of saying sorry to each other. I think where relationships go wrong is actually where one person is apologizing and one person is waiting for the sorry, right? And actually the dynamic of that is wrong, because actually in all arguments there is, yes, someone might be right, someone might be wrong, or whatever, but there is a conflict, and what needs resolving first is the conflict, and an acknowledgement that actually we could both do better here, and that actually we could both learn. And I think actually when you've got great relationships, what happens naturally is that you both look for the resolution together.
I've got better at apologising now that I've, like you said, Sophie, you have the right, I'm going to use that word, the right relationships. As I said, I don't put myself around people that don't bring out the best version of me. I don't want to be that person. So actually, I wonder if now that's why I find it easier to apologise, because I didn't used to like to. I used to feel as if it was like I was having to admit I was wrong, and I don't like doing that. I admit it. But if you're around people that are going to accept that, that actually it becomes a bit of like, oh, actually we've both been. Whereas when you've got the other Teflon coating person opposite you, that would then potentially spark, and that's why I have to walk away from those situations, because it doesn't. It doesn't end well.
But you can't always do that in your professional life, and I'm finding that it's how when the company is more hierarchical, and then the management is more like autocratic, or and has more of that kind of style. Like the issue is not with people that I'm managing, or not frequently with people who are on the same level as me, although it does sometimes happen. But it's always people higher up, and I always think, is there liability in an apology? Is if they apologize,
do they think
like is there a worry there? But if they explained that to me and said, we will never apologize to you because there's legal accountability, that doesn't mean that we're not ever sorry, or we don't ever think we've done anything wrong, then I would accept that. Like just explain it, because I don't understand it. I don't understand the lack of apology.
But it's the why, isn't it, behind it? It's
but people. So people in my personal life who have a really high opinion of me always say, I don't know why you put up with it. You just, you should just move on. And then, as again, I'm not necessarily talking about my current employment. And I said, you're so clever, you should set up your own business. And I'm like, it's not what I want to do, and I don't feel confident in doing that. So I just want to understand. I just like, well, I'm trying to explain myself a lot, so you understand me. Why don't you just explain yourself a little? So, because I really want to understand the other side as well. But
it does make me wonder where all this is going, particularly that there's a lot of narrative behind, oh, everybody's a bit this, and actually when you start looking at the statistics, that if as I say to people, if everybody's a bit that, then why isn't everybody a lot more that?
I get all the time, oh, well, we're all a bit autistic. And it's like, oh, so my autism is...
Well, as you know, Marianne, I do podcasts with senior leaders in business around culture change, etc. And I know that if you talk to those, if you talk to a number of senior leaders who are running successful companies, and by success, they don't measure success necessarily by pounds, shillings, and pence, but they measure them by their taking their people with them in the right direction. They will tell you that as leaders, they have to make themselves vulnerable, and as leaders, they have to admit when they're wrong.
But
so it sounds to me that you've got bad leaders.
No, it's the middle people. I'm hearing from other people, fire service, other people, that actually it's these middle ones, the ones
middle
at the
management.
top, the ones at the top actually want to know, but because it's all being they're being protected from it or shielded from it, but they don't actually necessarily want to. But of course, time being and everything else, they can't. So it's these people in the middle that need to sort of maybe just get over themselves and realize that the more you let people be themselves and you open those channels, the better.
And it's probably because those people don't feel secure in themselves. They don't feel secure in their positions. They don't necessarily feel they possibly are accidental managers. They've not had the right training in being managers to know that actually it's okay to go back to your senior management team and go, my people aren't happy and I want to improve that, because that sounds like a sign of weakness, but actually that would be the perfect thing to be doing, and going, actually, can you help me can you upskill me? Can you show me how to become a leader with a more compassionate heart? Can you show me how to become a leader with more empathy? Can you teach
Not
me?
just being a yes person.
This stuff needs education. It's not. This isn't simple.
But that's what people call autistic people canaries in the coal mine, because we point out what's not working well, and that's what we're good at. And it's like, why don't you appreciate that about us more, instead of being punitive towards us because we point out something that is perhaps a little bit difficult to hear.
Well, and also it gets to the like, as you say, when there's a problem with something, surely, I remember somebody saying to me once that, I say generalization, it was somebody that is autistic, but if the world was run by autistic people, we'd get to where we need to far quicker. And as for people saying that people don't have feelings necessarily, or they're not that emotional, I would very much disagree. My son, I mean, I had to laugh. I videoed him playing guitar yesterday, and he looked at it and he went, wow, I look amazing on there. And it was really funny because I was like, and I thought, no, actually, he does, and he thinks it, and that's not big-headed, and fair play to him. But he's a very emotional person. It's just, I think sometimes it's that not knowing sort of how maybe to be. So to make that generalization that people aren't is actually quite insulting, really.
Yeah, no, I always find it very funny when people call me too emotional and then try to claim that there's not enough empathy. And it's like, well, how come everyone I manage thinks I'm extremely empathic? So or suddenly they will say, oh, you're making this about you. No, you made it about me. And then I gave a defense, and then suddenly it's about me. But I actually didn't want this at all. But if I'm not allowed to defend myself after, or they say it's a non-issue, and it's like, but you brought up the issue, and all I did was respond. And
also, I used to, when I was younger, people used to say you're too this or too that, and I used to say, well, you write a list of how you want me to be. I won't be happy. And so sometimes I say to people, I wasn't aware that there was actually a criteria somewhere for how many words I was supposed to say in that sentence, or how I was supposed to respond. But crack on, if you want to give me that criteria, then.
And sometimes I think, how many times have you been crying because I was not empathic enough? Because I can tell you how many times I've been in floods of tears after an interaction where I didn't feel any empathy at all, and no willingness to actually even hear my side or hear me out. And and it's painful when it happens. But I have to emphasize, I do have loads of great working relationships as well. It's not just my personal life that is great, but when it goes wrong at work, it really goes wrong. Like, it doesn't just go wrong in a little way, it goes wrong spectacularly.
So something you would have worked really hard at all of that. Every single day is it. It's I know I can be, I've worked really, really hard over stuff, but some things will happen, and this weekend things happened, and things just went wrong for me. And, add in my age and add in other stuff in there. And it's quite easy for people to say, oh, it's because of this. It's because of your ADHD, or it's because of that. And I go, or it could have just been that it was because you were being a bit of a, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should point out.
Isn't an excuse, and I'm like, what do you mean my autism isn't an excuse? I don't want an excuse. I'm taking responsibility and accountability when you're not doing any of that. So that's what's your
We're just pointing out once again, Sophie's not talking about a specific individual or set of individuals. I think you're giving a viewpoint over
25 years
of time that you're working.
I've been working for 25 years. I've been in full-time employment for 25 years. So anything I say is a reflection of any given moment within those 25 years, and no one specific.
Yeah. It's been an interesting conversation, as always. Thank you so much, Sophie, and your menagerie of animals for coming on today and talking to us. As usual, I expect we've all learned something from today's conversation. If you've enjoyed this conversation, folks, please do continue the conversation. Join us either in A Better Way of Life, our little group that we've set up, so that we can continue these conversations. You'll find the details at abetterwayoflife.co.uk, or continue to support the podcast by giving it a follow. Either way, we love having you around. We'll be back again next week with more of the same. Until then, thank you so much to our guest today, Sofie Day, and all of the animals whose names I can't remember, but I'm getting old.
They're all from the Beatles.
Until then, bye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.